Person of color denied admittance to personal luxury plane, turns out it's hers and she fires the whole team. Have you at any point been decided before saying a word? Excused basically in light of the manner in which you look or where you come from. This is the tale of an influential lady who confronted that exact second, embarrassed and underrated in front of a group just to uncover a reality that left everybody stunned. What occurred next is an expert class in equity and change, and it's a story you would rather not miss. Before we start, where are you watching from today? Let us in the remarks in the event that you love rousing accounts of versatility and equity. Make a point to hit that like button, share this video and buy in. For additional unimaginable stories, your help assists us share these significant stories with considerably more individuals. Currently we should get into it. The mid-morning sun washed the confidential terminal in a brilliant shine, its smooth glass exterior mirroring the clamoring action of extravagance. Travel limousines arranged perfectly in the parking area, their clean surfaces shining under the light. Inside, richly dressed travelers moved with a quality of certainty, their discussions interspersed by the weak murmur of motors. Outside, Dr. Elena Harper got out of her dark vehicle, her heels clicking delicately against the immaculate black top. She was the image of balance, her custom-fitted jacket fitting totally over a silk shirt, an unpretentious presentation of her refined taste. Her hair maneuvered once more into a low bun gleamed under the daylight. Her disposition was quiet, practically tranquil, as she hauled her baggage behind her and moved toward the terminal entry. The programmed entryways slid open with a calm murmur, inviting her into a space of cleaned marble floors in delicate calfskin seating. A weak fragrance of new espresso and calfskin lingered palpably, mixing flawlessly with the downplayed extravagance of the environmental factors. Elena moved toward the registration counter where a pointedly dressed chaperone welcomed her with an expert grin. "Great morning, ma'am," the specialist said, her voice warm and obliging. "May I have your name and flight?" "Subtleties, Elena Harper," she answered, her tone consistent however courteous. "I have a booking for the personal luxury plane to Chicago." The orderly's fingers flew over the console, her eyes checking the screen, her forehead wrinkled somewhat, previously clearing immediately. "Yes, Miss Harper, you're good to go. The fly is ready and the group ought to board presently. Assuming that you'd like, you might stand by in the parlor or I can accompany you straightforwardly to the airplane." Elena gestured. "I'll go to the stream currently, thank you." The chaperone grin extended. "Obviously it's entryway 5. Simply past the celebrity. Relax, have a great trip." With a concise gesture, Elena advanced to the assigned entryway, her strides repeated delicately in the calm lobby where extravagant rug gave method for smoothing tile close to the personal luxury plane passageways. Entryway 5 materialized, the stream sparkling like a gem under the brilliant daylight. As she drew closer, a formally dressed man remaining by the entry grabbed her attention. He was tall and forcing his stance firm and definitive. His uniform recognized him as the chief of the flight. Elena offered a courteous grin as she drew nearer, yet the man's demeanor stayed cold, his eyes restricted, developing marginally. "Could I at any point help you?" he asked, his tone cut and generic. "I'm hanging around for the trip to Chicago," Elena answered, her voice quiet and estimated. The chief looked at her bag, then back at her, his lips twisted into a weak, nearly subtle sneer. "This is a confidential flight, ma'am," he said, his voice dribbling with haughtiness. "I figure you may be at some unacceptable entryway." Elena raised an eyebrow yet kept herself restrained. "I'm mindful this is door 5, right?" "It is," the commander said, folding his arms. "However, the stream isn't for business travelers, it's for private clients." There was an inconspicuous accentuation on the word private, a tone intended to underline prohibition. Elena felt the heaviness of his words, however, didn't falter. "I comprehend," she said, her voice firm yet pleasant. "I am a confidential client." The skipper grin extended. He laughed softly, shaking his head as though he was unable to accept what he was hearing. "Look, ma'am, I don't know everything that you've been said, however this isn't the sort of flight you simply book online. Perhaps attempt the Vitally terminal, they'll get you arranged." Elena's fingers fixed around the handle of her bag, however her appearance resisted the urge to panic before she could answer. Another voice hindered, "Is there an issue here?" A flight chaperone wearing a fresh uniform drew nearer with a CLI board close by. She looked at Elena, then went to the commander with a scrutinizing look. "Only a tad of disarray," the chief said pretentiously. "She believes she's on this flight." The airline steward's eyes cleared over Elena, her look waiting momentarily on her shoes and baggage prior to flicking back to her face. There was a flash of uncertainty in her appearance. "Ma'am," the airline steward started, her tone nonpartisan yet edged with distrust, "do you have any documentation for this flight, an affirmation number or a ticket?" Elena ventured into her pack and recovered her telephone. With a couple of taps she pulled up the affirmation email and gave it to the airline steward. The lady's eyebrows lifted somewhat as she examined the screen, her demeanor selling out a second of shock before she immediately concealed it. "Well," the airline steward said, giving the telephone back, "everything is by all accounts all together. I'll illuminate the team." The chief grimaced yet said nothing, his jaw fixing somewhat. He moved to one side hesitantly, permitting Elena to continue toward the stream. As she strolled past him, she felt his look waiting on her, a blend of bothering and doubt carved into his highlights. Elena took a full breath as she moved toward the steps paving the way to the fly. She could feel the pressure all around, the implicit judgment looming over her like a cloud, yet she wouldn't allow it to shake her. With her head held high she rose the means, each stage a tranquil demonstration of insubordination against the suppositions that had been made about her. Much to their dismay, the genuine showdown was just barely starting. The inside of the personal luxury plane was downright stunning. Extravagant calfskin seats in a rich ivory tint lined the lodge, their ergonomic plans promising solace on even the longest flights. Finished wooden framing glimmered under the delicate sparkle of recessed lighting, and the weak fragrance of new blossoms blended in with an unobtrusive smidgen of citrus waited in the air. A little eating table was set with fine gem glasses and an rich game plan of orchids, their fragile petals immaculate by the rushed speed of movement. Elena Harper ventured into the lodge, her heels sinking somewhat into the thick covering. Her eyes cleared over the space, taking in the extravagance that was in numerous ways a sign of her persistent effort and vision. This fly wasn't just an extravagance, it was an instrument for productivity, a portable expansion of her reality spreading over tries. However, her second of calm reflection was stopped as she saw the team chief. Joel Carter had followed her on board his, however, act firm with noticeable bothering behind him. The airline steward Aaron murmured to another team part. They kept their voices low. Their subtle looks toward Elena made their considerations clear. "She doesn't have a place here," Aaron murmured, noisy enough for Elena to get the weak edge of scorn. Elena stopped, her hand laying on the back of a seat. Her look met Aaron's momentarily, and the airline steward immediately dismissed her, cheeks flushing a profound red. "Miss Harper," Chief Carter expressed, venturing forward, his tone excessively formal, "I'm worried there's been some kind of slip-up. This flight was contracted under quite certain plans, and well, as much as need might arise to follow expert convention." Elena went to completely confront him, her demeanor quiet yet enduring. "I'm very much aware of the courses of action, Skipper. She said equitably, I made them myself. Her words landed like a well dash. Pointed bolt. Carter flickered, immediately startled yet immediately recuperated. With all due regard, ma'am, these plans are exceptionally elite. Maybe you were misled, deceived. Elena rehashed, her voice delicate yet conveying an edge. By whom? The very flying branch of Harper Worldwide, or the chief group that deals with this fly? The skipper's face vacillated, a gleam of uncertainty moving quickly over his elements. Harper Worldwide, that is right, Elena said, collapsing her arms. The holding organization that possesses the stream. My organization. There was a beat of quiet, weighty and off-kilter. The murmur of the motors was the main sound, highlighting the strain all around. Erin ventured forward, her clipboard gripped firmly in her grasp. Ma'am, she started, her voice touched with constrained consideration. We weren't given any sign that the proprietor would join this flight. We expected you accepted. Elena interposed, her tone adequately sharp to slice through. Erin, excuse you. Expected I didn't have a place here due to how I look. Erin mouth opened and shut, her face withering. She stammered, that not what I implied. Then what did you mean? Elena squeezed, her look unfaltering. Since from the occasion I showed up, I've been met with only aggression and haughtiness. In the event that it wasn't really necessary to focus on appearances, then clarify for me what it was about. The quietness that followed was stunning. Carter moved awkwardly, staying away from Elena's eyes, while Erin grasped her clipboard like a lifesaver. The third group part, a more youthful airline steward who had stayed calm, looked down at her shoes, obviously wishing to be elsewhere. I'll enlighten you about it, Elena proceeded, with her voice consistent yet conveying the heaviness of power. It was about presumptions. You saw an individual of color approach this fly, and that's what you concluded? She could never be the one in control, that she could never be your boss, and on second thought of checking the realities, you decided to belittle and excuse me. Carter opened his mouth to answer, however Elena held up a hand, halting him. I've heard enough, she said solidly and honestly. I don't have the persistence to engage pardons. She went to Erin, her eyes limiting. You taunted me before different travelers. You regarded me like I were undetectable, disgraceful. Of fundamental regard is that the way in which you address this organization? I know, ma'am, Aeon stammered, her voice scarcely over a murmur. I didn't mean you didn't intend to get found out, Elena said pointedly. How about we be clear regarding that? Carter, obviously understanding the weightiness of the circumstance, ventured forward. Miss Harper, in the event that I may, we profoundly lament any misconception. This is obviously a learning and open door, and will guarantee it doesn't work out. Again Elena's eyes flicked to him, her demeanor incoherent. A learning opportunity, she rehashed, her voice bound with incredulity. You're mixed up. In the event that you think this is a second for reflection, it's a second for responsibility. She moved in the direction of the lodge entryway, her developments conscious, venturing into her sack. She recovered her telephone and settled on a speedy decision. Yes, this is Elena Harper, she said, her voice consistent. I really want the terminal director at door 5. Quickly, there's been an episode with the team of my fly and I needed address before takeoff. The group traded uncomfortable looks, their certainty unwinding as time passes. Elena finished the call and turned back to confront them. I've really buckled down and overcome much to endure this sort of conduct, she said, her voice undaunted. You've made your presumptions about me clear. Currently allowed me to make something clear to you. This sort of bias has no spot in my organization. You've humiliated yourselves, not me. The lodge fell quiet again, the heaviness of her words settling vigorously in the air. The terminal administrator would show up soon, yet the group definitely realized their destiny was fixed. The delicate snap of Elena's heels reverberated through the lodge as she moved to one of the seats and smoothly plunked down her stance as made as could be expected outside the warm daylight played off the metallic surface of the fly, a conspicuous difference to the strained air. Inside, Skipper Carter and the group stood ungracefully by the entryway, their uneasiness substantial as they traded apprehensive looks. Minutes felt like hours, the quietness interspersed exclusively by the weak murmur of the cooling Elena, unbothered by the heaviness of their steps, ventured into her pack and took out her tablet. Her fingers schemed over the screen as she opened a record, her consideration apparently consumed by her work. However, her quiet attitude was purposeful, each development intentional. She believed that them should feel the weightiness of the circumstance to sit with their activities and their presumptions. They had attempted to lessen her, and presently she would make them defy the results. The sound of rushed strides broke the peaceful minutes after the fact. The terminal chief showed up at the entryway, his face flushed from effort. He was a tall man in his mid-40s, dressed flawlessly in a naval force suit that gripped to him awkwardly in the noontime heat. His articulation was a combination of criticalness and fear, his eyes shooting anxiously between Elena and the group. Miss Harper, he started, venturing into the lodge with a deferential gesture. I came as fast as I might. I at some point profoundly apologize for any burden you've encountered. Elena turned upward from her tablet, her look consistent and undaunted. Much obliged to you for coming, Mr. Rowland, she said equitably. I trust you've been advised. The chief wavered, then gestured. I was educated there was an issue with the group. I might want to guarantee you, ma'am, that we treat these issues exceptionally in a serious way. Elena signaled toward the standing team, her appearance faithful. Then I recommend you start by tending to their way of behaving. From the second I showed up, I was met with only loftiness and unmitigated separation. They made presumptions about who I and I'm fit for in light of just what I look like. The chief's face renayed as he moved in the direction of Commander Carter and the others. Is this genuine? He asked, his voice low yet sharp. Carter moved awkwardly, his common quality of power totally missing. There was a misconception, he muttered. Staying away from eye-to-eye connection. We didn't understand she was. You didn't understand I was what? Elena interfered with her voice quiet however cutting. Your boss, the proprietor of the stream, or somebody writing fundamental regard. The chief's jaw fixed, his uneasiness obvious as he turned around to Elena. Miss Harper, I profoundly lament this occurrence. Have confidence it will be managed properly. I'm certain it will. Elena said, her tone bound with calm power. Yet let us be clear, this isn't pretty much me. This is about the way of life of this organization. This conduct didn't appear suddenly. It's a side effect of a bigger issue, one that I won't endure. The chief gestured rapidly, his arrangement too energetic. Totally, ma'am, we'll execute whatever actions you consider significant. Elena's G-days solidified. I've proactively gone to lengths, she said, taking effect right now. Commander Carter and Aaron are feeling significantly better of their obligations. They are at this point not wanted to address this organization or its qualities. Carter's face depleted of variety. What's more, Aaron let out a little wheeze. Miss Harper, please. Carter started, his voice ascending in distress. I've been with this organization for quite a long time. This was an innocent mix-up, an innocent misstep. And Elena repeated, her voice cold. You embarrassed me before a group. You excused me without really taking a look at the realities. That wasn't a misstep, it was a decision, and it says a lot about your personality. Aaron, who had stayed quiet up to this point, ventured forward, her hands fastened firmly together. Miss Harper, I genuinely had nothing but good intentions. I was simply, you were sustaining the very predisposition that is tormented individuals like me for ages. Elena said pointedly, your aims are Immaterial. What is important are your activities, and those activities have outcomes. Tears welled in Aaron's eyes, yet Elena's appearance didn't relax. She went to the supervisor. Guarantee their end is handled right away and make it clear to the remainder of the staff this sort of conduct won't go on without serious consequences. The director gestured gravely. It will be done, ma'am. I'll by and by manage it. Fulfilled. Elena stood, her directing presence filling the lodge. Great. And another thing, Mr. Roland, lead a full survey of your recruiting and preparing rehearses. Inclination, whether cognizant or oblivious, has no place in my association. I need a report in front of me inside the week. The chief fixed his appearance undaunted. Yes, ma'am, consider it done. Without one more word, Elena gathered her tablet and strolled toward the entryway. As she passed the now quiet group, she stopped, her look clearing over them one last time. Let this be an example, she said, her voice quiet however firm. Regard isn't discretionary, it's a necessity, and when you neglect to satisfy that guideline, you'll find there's a bad situation for you here. With that, she plummeted the steps, leaving the group and the terminal chief behind. The daylight outside was similarly as warm, the day as splendid as when she had shown up. However, presently there was a weight lifted from her shoulders, an update that facing Bias was as much about safeguarding herself as it was tied in with making change for others. As Elena move into her holding up vehicle, she permitted herself a little fulfilled grin. The fight wasn't over by no stretch of the imagination, but rather for now she had done something worth remembering, and she would keep on doing so. Each showdown in turn. The low murmur of the extravagance motor swirled all around as Elena Harper sat in the secondary lounge, her considerations a hurricane of reflection. The colored windows outlined the sunlit landing area outside, a momentary picture of the stream stopping as her vehicle gradually pulled away. She looked out at the terminal, her psyche replaying the conflict with the team. Each word, each signal. Her telephone hummed delicately in her lap, intruding on her. Re-getting it, she saw the name Rebecca Langston move quickly over the screen. Rebecca was her leader, colleague, as well as a believed associate who had been with her through endless fights in business and past. Rebecca, Elena said, her voice consistent as she addressed the call. I heard. Rebecca started without preface, her tone a combination of concern and interest. Are all of you right? Roland called my office in a frenzy around 15 minutes prior. Elena let out a little moan, her fingers following the smooth edge of her telephone. I'm fine, Rebecca. The circumstance was dealt with. I'm speculating took care of means you didn't allow it to slide, Rebecca said, a clue of a grin in her voice. Great, they should have been reminded who they were managing with. It wasn't just about me, Elena answered, her tone intelligent. It's about what it addresses. In the event that they can deal with me like this knowing nothing about me, the number of others have they excused or embarrassed individuals without the power or position to retaliate. Rebecca's voice relaxed. You're right. As forever, what's the subsequent stage? I've requested a survey of the organization's preparation and employing rehearses, Elena said, yet that is only the starting. This isn't whenever I've first seen this sort of conduct in the flying business, and I question it'll be the last. Now is the ideal time to accomplish something beyond respond. Rebecca stopped briefly. Previously answering, you're contemplating disclosing this, aren't you? Elena's look moved to the skyline where the far-off city horizon sparkled in the early evening light. I am, she conceded, not as it were. That is about me by and by, however, as a more extensive discussion about foundational predisposition. Individuals need to realize these things are as yet happening even in spaces that case to esteem correspondence and progress. Rebecca's tone turned common sense. I'll begin drafting an assertion, something that features the more extensive issues Without making about the present episode explicitly, we can likewise contact your organization for associations on Variety Drives. Do it, Elena said solidly, and contact the lawful group. I believe they should draft provisions for stricter enemy of segregation strategies across all Harper Worldwide auxiliaries. This isn't pretty much keeping away from claims, it's tied in with setting a standard. Think of it as done, Rebecca answered. And Elena, I'm glad for you didn't simply allow it to go unnoticed in any event, when it would have been simple. Elena grinned faintly, her grasp on the telephone loosening up, expresses gratitude toward Rebecca. I'll contact Bass with you later. As the call finished, the vehicle maneuvered onto a calmer street fixed with transcending trees and rambling bequests. Elena rested back up against the delicate cowhide seat, her considerations floating to the many fights she'd battled to reach this point in her life. Being underrated was the same old thing. She had confronted it in meeting rooms, during talks, and even at get-togethers, yet regardless of how frequently it happened, it actually conveyed a sting. Her driver, Marcus, looked at her in the rear view. Reflect all that, okay, Miss Harper? He asked, his profound voice touched with concern. Elena met his look in the mirror and offered a consoling gesture. All is well, Marcus, simply one more day. Marcus grinned faintly, his eyes warm with understanding. He had worked for her for quite a long time and had seen firsthand the deterrents she explored day to day, a large number of them undetectable to people around her. As the vehicle moved toward the carport of her bequest, Elena's telephone hummed again. This time it was a message, a brief yet genuine note from her more seasoned sibling. Darnell caught wind of what occurred at the terminal. Glad for you, sister. You've forever been the one to support what's right. Informed me as to whether you really want anything. Elena's chest fixed with feeling. Darnell had forever been her stone, even at the point when they were kids. His words were an indication of the strength she conveyed for herself as well as for her family and the local area she addressed. She got out of the vehicle as it reached a delicate stop, the natural side of her home ascending before her. The terrific stone exterior and manicured nurseries were a far cry from where she had begun. However, they were a demonstration of her assurance and difficult work at this point. Even as she strolled through the stupendous entry, the heaviness of the day waited in her office, a rambling space loaded up with shelves. Furthermore, the delicate shine of evening light separating through tall windows. Elena Saturday at her work area. She opened her PC and started composing notes for Rebecca, thoughts for organizations, associations they could support, and ways of rolling out the improvements she imagined a reality. Yet as her fingers stopped over the console, she permitted herself a second to reflect. She thought about the team, their appearances as they genuinely understood the gravity of their activities. She didn't savor their defeat, however, she trusted it filled in as a reminder, not only for them, however, for everybody watching. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about change. And as Elena Harper shut her PC, her purpose set, she wouldn't stop until regard and fairness were something other than words. They would be the groundwork of each and every space she entered. The night Sunday project a warm golden gleam across the skyline as Elena Harper sat on the patio of her home, a steaming cup of chamomile tea supported in her grasp. The rambling nursery before her loaded up with cautiously arranged blossoms and bushes influenced tenderly in the breeze. Notwithstanding the quiet environmental elements, her psyche was a bustling place, her considerations surrounding the occasions of the day and what they implied. She put the cup down on a little glass table, her fingers waited on its edge. Opposite her, more established sibling Darnell reclined in his seat. He had shown up unannounced soon after she had gotten comfortable, carrying with him his standard quiet presence and a six-pack of Shimmering water his commitment to any kin make up for lost time meeting your as well. Calm, Darnell said, ending the quietness. He laid a lower leg on his contrary knee. Watching her with the sort of mindful look just a more seasoned king could dominate converse with me. Elena let out a delicate moan, her shoulders loosening up marginally. It's not whenever something first like this has happened, Darnell, she conceded. Be that as it may, each time it does I can't help thinking about the amount of this. Could one individual at any point change? Darnell gestured mindfully, his look moving to the skyline. You've been changing things your entire life, Elena, whether you see it or on the other hand not. She grinned faintly, valuing his words yet at the same time feeling the heaviness of her viewpoints. I can fire a team or execute new strategies, she said. However, does it truly shift the needle, or does it simply push the issue not too far off? Darnell rested forward, laying his elbows, kneeling down. Let me tell you something, younger sibling. You're not simply anybody going with those choices. You're Elena Harper. When you act, individuals notice. They talk, they reflect, and once in a while that is everything necessary to begin a gradually expanding influence. Elena's look dropped to her hands, her fingers following the edge of her teacup. Yet what might be said about individuals who don't have the stage I do? What might be said about the ones who are excused, hushed, in light of the fact that nobody's there to listen? That is precisely why you're doing this, Darnell said immovably. For you as well as for them, you're building something greater, something that endures. His words waited in the air between them, a tranquil confirmation of the reason she conveyed. Elena took a taste of her tea, allowing the glow to saturate her, establishing her. You're correct, she said delicately. It's greater than me. Soon thereafter Elena withdrew to her office. The room with its dim wood retires and floor-to-roof windows was her safe haven, a spot where thoughts were conceived and designs came to fruition. She sat at her work area, the shine of her PC enlightening her face as she composed an email to Rebecca, subject extending our range. Rebecca, we should not stop at ATI predisposition preparing and strategy surveys. I need to make a more extensive drive, a stage that effectively advances variety and consideration, not simply inside Harper, worldwide. In any case, across enterprises, start by contacting a portion of the associations we've cooperated inside the past. We should have a highest point, something that unites pioneers, promoters and voices from minimized networks. I need significant arrangements, not simply conversations. Likewise, we should save an asset for grants or mentorship programs. Something unmistakable that gives individuals a way ahead. We should make the most of this. Elena fulfilled. She hit send and reclined in her seat, her brain previously hustling with potential outcomes. This wasn't just about fixing a solitary occurrence, it was about reshaping the way of life that permitted such episodes to happen. In any case, as the night developed, Elena ended up returning to the memory of the team's countenances when reality had been uncovered. She didn't savor their inconvenience, yet she was unable to deny the fulfillment of considering them responsible. But there was a waiting inquiry she was unable to shake. Had they gained anything from the experience, or would they convey their biases into the following part of their lives? She opened her diary, a propensity she had kept up with since her school days, and started to compose. Responsibility is just the initial step. Genuine change requires understanding and inward retribution with the inclinations we convey, regardless of whether we're mindful of them. I can consider individuals responsible, however, could I at any point assist them with seeing what needs to change inside themselves? Is there an approach to overcome any barrier among result and development? She stopped, her pen floating over the page. The response wasn't as yet clear, however she knew the actual inquiry was significant. The following morning Elena's vision started to come to fruition. Rebecca had As of now, answered with energy, and her group had begun gathering a rundown of likely accomplices. For the drive, the culmination would be an enormous endeavor, yet Elena felt a re-established feeling of direction as she surveyed the fundamental plan. Soon thereafter a letter showed up at her office, the envelope fresh and plain, dragged no return address. Inquisitive Elena opened it, unfurling a solitary piece of paper. The penmanship was slick, however new. Dear Miss Harper, I couldn't say whether you'll at any point understand this, yet I felt constrained to compose. I was at the terminal yesterday when all that happened. I saw how the team treated you, and I perceived how you held fast. I've functioned in this industry for more than 10 years, and I've seen things that made me question why I stay. However, seeing you hold them responsible gave me trust. It advised me that change is conceivable even in places where it feels unimaginable. Thank you for showing us what strength resembles. Truly an observer. Elena gazed at the letter briefly, her heart enlarging with surprising feeling. It was something seemingly insignificant, a solitary letter from somebody she would probably never meet, yet advising her that each wave she created was sufficient, could possibly contact lives she may in all likelihood never see. She set the letter in her work area cabinet, a peaceful image of the influence she was endeavoring to understand. Assurance she got back to her work. There was so much to do, and she was prepared for the test. The morning daylight sifted through the tall windows of Elena Harper's office, projecting delicate brilliant tones over the rich mahogany work area, and conveniently coordinated documents outside. The far-off murmur of the city filled in as a setting, its mood consistent and perpetual, yet inside the air was accused of direction. As Elena looked into a pile of proposition that had been arranged for the time being, the words from the unknown letter she got waited to her, reinforcing her purpose. The recommendations fastidiously gathered by Rebecca and her group itemized expected accomplices for the variety and consideration drive Elena was working from. Grassroots associations upholding from minimized networks to corporate partners focused on even-handed practices. The rundown was extensive, yet Elena couldn't shake the inclination that something was absent. Something more profound, more extraordinary. A delicate thump at the entryway pulled her from her contemplations. Come in, she called, her voice consistent. Rebecca entered, conveying a smooth tablet and a scratch pad. Her customized suit and certain step mirrored the proficiency she was known for. However, the comforting grin she offered was particularly individual. Great morning, Elena, Rebecca expressed, sinking into the seat inverse her work area. I needed to go over the fundamental thoughts for the highest point. We previously had interest from a couple central members. Elena gestured, motioning for her to proceed with. Rebecca swiped through her tablet. The public value establishment is keen on co-facilitating, which could bring huge perceivability. They've likewise recommended remembering a board highlighting people who've encountered separation for proficient settings. It could add a human component to the conversations. Elena rested forward, laying her elbows on the work area. That is a decent begin, she said nicely. However, I don't believe this should transform into another occasion where individuals share stories. Everybody applauds and afterward nothing transforms. We really want activity, responsibilities, something unmistakable. Rebecca's forehead wrinkled somewhat as she thought about this. Imagine a scenario where we put forth quantifiable objectives for taking an interest. Associations vow to employ and advance a specific level of underrepresented people inside a particular time span. Elena's eyes illuminated. Presently we're getting someplace, however we should make it a stride further. Deal assets to assist them with meeting those objectives, preparing programs, mentorship drives, and admittance to networks that can uphold long-haul change. Rebecca wrote down Notes gesturing as she composed, that is precisely exact thing this industry needs, less talk, more instruments. As they kept conceptualizing, the discussion went to planned operations. Elena demanded making the highest point available for leaders as well as for workers at all levels, especially those from underrepresented bunches. She needed voices that were frequently silent to be heard, their viewpoints forming the conversations. Rebecca stopped as she looked at her tablet. There's another thing, she said reluctantly. We've gotten a few media requests about the previous episode at the terminal. A few outlets are requesting a remark. Elena's demeanor solidified somewhat. I'm not keen on making this about me. This drive isn't tied in with causing to notice what occurred. It's tied in with resolving the bigger issue. Rebecca gestured, comprehended. I'll set up a impartial articulation, something that moves the concentration to the more extensive objectives of the highest point. Great, Elena said, her tone firm. This isn't about titles, it's tied in with making genuine change. Sometime thereafter, Elena ended up strolling through the Harper Worldwide Central Command. The structure with its transcending glass exterior and smooth current plan was an image of the domain she had fabricated, yet today she wasn't contemplating its loftiness, she was pondering its kin. She ventured into the staff parlor, unannounced, her presence drawing astonished looks from representatives assembled around little tables. The room was unobtrusive, contrasted with the chief suites. However, it was warm and inviting, where the heartbeat of the organization could be felt. Miss Harper, a young lady expressed, ascending from her seat in shock. We didn't anticipate seeing you here. Elena offered a comforting grin, motioning for her to remain situated. I needed to come by and hear from every one of you, she said, her voice conveying authentic interest. Your considerations, your thoughts, whatever is at the forefront of your thoughts. Briefly there was a reluctant quietness. Then leisurely discussion started to stream. Representatives shared their encounters, both positive and testing. Some discussed open doors they had been given at Harper Worldwide that they hadn't found somewhere else, while others delayed prior to relating minutes when they felt ignored or misjudged. One man, a more established support laborer named Thomas, shouted out after a snapshot of reflection, "Ma'am," he said, his voice consistent yet touched with feeling. It implies a great deal that you're here. It shows you give it a second thought. However, once in a while times I keep thinking about whether individuals who pursue the choices up top truly see what it resembles down here. You can have every one of the approaches on the planet, however, in the event that the way of life doesn't not change, anything else will. Elena gestured gradually, his words striking a line. You're totally correct, Thomas, she said. Culture isn't underlying meeting rooms, it's worked here in spaces like one or the other's precisely exact thing we want to address. The morning was cool and fresh as Elena remained on the patio of her domain. A light sweater hung over her shoulders. A steaming cup of dark espresso rested in her grasp, the glow spreading through her fingers as she gazed out at the skyline. The nursery beneath, as yet shimmering with dew, was buzzing with bird tune, yet her contemplations were somewhere else. Today denoted the principal formal arranging meeting for the culmination, a substantial move toward the vision that had consumed her contemplations since the episode at the terminal. While she felt steadfast, there was an anxious energy underneath her quiet inside. She maintained that this culmination should be in excess of an emblematic signal. It expected to mean something, to achieve something genuine. The Harper Worldwide meeting room was a scope of cleaned oak and glass, its smooth innovation a demonstration of the organization's prosperity. By mid-morning the room was loaded up with key individuals from her administration group, as well as a small bunch of outside experts who had some expertise in variety and consideration. Rebecca remained close to the top of the table, a tablet close by her, sharp Eyes examining the room as the last couple of participants sunk into their seats, she provided Elena with a little gesture of consolation. What's more, Elena had her spot at the top of the table. Thank you for being here, Elena started, her voice consistent yet warm as. You realize this drive isn't simply one more corporate task for me, it's very own, it's something I've lived through, something I've battled against, and presently it's something not set in stone to change, not only here at Harper Worldwide, however any place we can have an effect. The room fell quiet, the weight of her words settling over the gathering. Elena let the pause wait, guaranteeing she had their undivided focus prior to proceeding with this culmination. She said, isn't about me or even this organization, about making a stage where voices have been disregarded or excused can at long last be heard, where we don't simply discuss change yet get it going. Rebecca ventured forward, taking the line. We've illustrated a couple of key support points for the culmination, she said, extending a record onto the screen at the front of the room: schooling, responsibility and activity. Under these point of support we'll have board studios and roundtable conversations with pioneers, backers and those straightforwardly influenced by foundational predisposition. One of the specialists, a moderately aged lady with silver streak hair named Mariana, lifted her hand. I think the construction is solid, she said, yet how would we guarantee the right voices are in the room? Time and again these discussions are overwhelmed by individuals who as of now hold power, while the people who should be heard are sidelined. Elena gestured, valuing the inquiry. That is precisely exact thing we really want to stay away from, she said. I need to focus on speakers and members who can bring lived encounters to the table, individuals who comprehend the issues scholastically as well as by, and I need to ensure this highest point is open monetarily, geologically and socially. Mariana grinned, obviously happy with the reaction. In the event that we can pull that off, this could be earth-shattering. One more hand went up, this time from Michael, the organization's head of HR. What's the long-term plan, he asked. The culmination is an extraordinary beginning stage, yet how do we guarantee the force doesn't bomb? A short time later, Elena inclined forward, her hands caught on the table. That is where the activity support point comes in. Each association that takes part will be approached to genuinely commit quantifiable responsibilities. Whether it's recruiting targets, preparing projects or mentorship, open doors. We likewise make a subsequent system to follow progress and consider individuals responsible. Michael gestured nicely. Furthermore, Harper Worldwide, what responsibilities are we making? Elena didn't hold back. Setting the norm when the culmination happens. I need Harper Worldwide to have a model variety program set up. That implies exploring each part of our employing advancement and maintenance practices. Will show others how it's done. The room hummed with calm endorsement, heads gesturing as her promise sank in. Elena could feel the energy shift, the underlying distrust giving way to veritable energy as the gathering advanced. The thoughts streamed uninhibitedly. Rebecca accepted fastidious notes as standard members conceptualized ways of connecting with participants. From virtual boards to intelligent studios, Mariana recommended cooperating with colleges to include more youthful voices, while another expert proposed a grant store for underrepresented understudies seeking after professions in enterprises with huge hindrances to passage. By the time the gathering finished, Elena felt a flood of positive thinking. The system for the highest point was something other than a diagram. It was turning into a development, an aggregate exertion driven by energy and reason. Soon thereafter, Elena strolled through the lobbies of Harper Worldwide, her means intentional yet slow. She came by The representative parlor again, this chance to talk with a little gathering of understudies accumulated around a table. They turned upward. Astonished yet satisfied to see her, Miss Harper, one of them said rapidly, standing. "What brings you here? I needed to hear from every one of you," she said, her tone welcoming. "You're the eventual fate of this organization and your voices matter. How about we improve to make a more comprehensive working environment?" The understudies traded looks, their underlying delay giving approach to interest. One young lady LLA talked first. "Really, seeing you is motivating. View this so in a serious way, yet in some cases it seems like the progressions are occurring at the top and we don't know how they streamed down to us." Elena gestured, her demeanor insightful. "That is a fair point. Change needs to occur at each level, and that incorporates making spaces where you feel engaged to make some noise. What might assist you with feeling more associated with these endeavors?" LLA wavered, then said, "Perhaps a mentorship program, something that matches understudies with pioneers in the organization who can direct us and help us develop." Elena grinned heartily. "I love that thought. Think of it as done." The discussion gone on, with the understudies sharing their encounters and thoughts. When EL left, she felt a recharged feeling of clearness. The culmination was only one piece of the puzzle. Genuine change required listening to pioneers and specialists, as well as to every individual who made up the texture of the organization. The stupendous lobby was a sight to observe. Transcending glass walls permitted daylight to flood the space, projecting crystals of light onto the cleaned marble floor. Lines of seats sprinkled with smooth tables were organized to confront a phase outlined by flowing plant life, representing development and restoration. Pennants with the culmination's name, "Voices of Progress," hung exquisitely along the walls, their plans basic yet striking strong letters on a dark blue foundation. Elena Harper stood behind the stage, taking a full breath as the last minutes before her initial location ticked away. The room past was loaded up with more than 1,000 participants, pioneers from different businesses, advocates, scholastics, and those whose voices had been generally sidelined. She could hear the weak murmur of discussion, a low buzz of expectation that helped her to remember why she was here. Prepared. Rebecca's voice bankrupt through her viewpoints, quiet however touched with support. Elena went to her contribution, a little however certain grin. Prepared. The lights diminished as Elena ventured onto the stage, her strides consistent however intentional. The room fell quiet, everyone's eyes on her as she moved toward the platform. She stopped briefly, letting the heaviness existing apart from everything else settle before she started. "Great morning," she said, her voice consistent. "Furthermore, Thunderous today is something other than a social event. It's a source of inspiration, and opportunity to stand up to awkward bits of insight and focus on significant change." She stopped, examining the crowd, her look waiting on faces that mirrored a blend of discouraged assurance, interest, and expectation for as well long. She proceeded with, "We've lived in frameworks that quiet specific voices while enhancing others. We've permitted predispositions, cognizant or oblivious, to direct who has a place and who doesn't yet. Today we're saying sufficient. Today we start to remake." Her words lingered palpably, their weight substantial. She proceeded to share her individual excursion, the new episode at the terminal, as well as a long period of encounters that had formed her comprehension of bias and flexibility. "When I was excused and put down at the terminal, it wasn't new," she said, her tone estimated. "However, what I understood at that time was that my story wasn't remarkable. It was essential for a bigger story, an example that rehashes itself in endless lives, in endless spots, and that is the reason we're here, to break the example, to make something better." The remainder of the day unfurled with An energy that felt electric. Boards highlighting speakers from varying backgrounds shared accounts of win and battle. Their words met with gestures, adulation and even tears. Studios urged participants to challenge their suppositions, investigating the predispositions they conveyed and how to destroy them. Pioneers committed to quantifiable objectives, marking promises to carry out variety programs. Mentorship potential opened doors and even-handed employing rehearses. One of the most moving minutes came during a round conversation, highlighting youthful experts including LLA. The understudy Elena had addressed a long time before. LLA shared her vision for a working environment where each individual, no matter what their experience, felt seen and esteemed. Her words were met with a thunderous applause, a demonstration of the force of her voice. Elena watched from the crowd, her heart enlarging proudly. This was precisely exact thing she had imagined, a space where voices that were frequently disregarded could become the overwhelming focus. As the day progressed into night, the highest point finished up with an end gathering. Participants blended their discussions, loaded up with thoughts and plans for the future. Elena traveled through the group, participating in conversations and expressing gratitude toward members for their commitments. At one point she found herself up close and personal with Mariana, the advisor who had been instrumental in forming the highest point structure. Mariana brought her glass up in a toast to a future based on activity she said, her grin warm. Elena clunked her glass gently against Mariana's to the fact that night as Elena returned makes future where nobody quieted home. She felt a significant feeling of achievement, yet she likewise realized this was only the starting. The highest point had sowed seeds, yet it would require continuous work to sustain them into enduring change. She sat at her work area opening her diary one last time for the day. Reflection: today I saw what's conceivable. At the point when individuals meet up with open hearts and brains, I saw boldness in the tales shared, assurance in the responsibilities made, and trust according to the people who have been hanging tight for the second. Yet this isn't the end. Change is an excursion, not an objective. We've ventured out, yet there's something else to do. I will continue to listen, keep learning, continue battling in light of the fact that the world we're building is worth the effort. Setting her pen down, Elena reclined in her seat, a little yet certifiable grin gracing her lips. Outside the night hushed up, the stars dispersed like seeds across the sky, an update that even the littlest lights could enlighten the most obscure of spots, and she would continue to establish those seeds, each voice in turn, thus which began as a snapshot of bias turned into a strong indication of responsibility and the battle for regard. The story isn't just around one individual, it's about the change we can rouse when we face foul play. In the event that this story moved you, don't neglect to like, offer and buy into our channel. Hit the warning chime so you won't miss additional motivating stories like this one. Together, how about we enhance voices that mama